What's a privilege that most people don't realize is a privilege? Now for the comments. Sleeping through the night. Didn't think of this one at first, but knowing how difficult life is when you don't get enough sleep, I couldn't agree more. I actually knew a guy that got fatal insomnia in high school. I couldn't imagine having it. It's really hard on the body and the mind to be wired like that. Hope that dude is in a better state now. I'm fortunate that I'm not stressed out at night these days, but when there were academic or intellectual, sometimes emotional stresses, I'd have the most lucid dreams / nightmares, and it felt too real to want to go back there to sleep. I'm vibing for now. Well, I think that the guy is dead. I haven't seen him in 7 years and fatal insomnia kills in about 1 to 2 years. There are drugs you can use to prolong it, but eventually it catches up with you. I think they're doing experiments with H2S to induce hibernation in humans. If this is successful, there is a chance we can develop a therapy for people with this condition, where they can intermittently get the shutdown time they need to function and survive. No, it's not a cure, but it is a chance at a happy life. This discovery was made upon multiple discoveries of unharmed hibernating humans that got stranded in the cold. Their body had produced higher levels of H2S, and last I recall they were investigating the genes for it. My daughter slept through the night for the first time in her 10 months of life the other night. Between the last trimester of pregnancy and her getting up to 3x or more a night, I haven't had more than 4 hours of consecutive sleep in a year. But she slept through the night, and after I made sure she was still alive, I almost cried because I felt so good. Yay, she's finally getting settled into a routine. So true. You really don't notice how it impacts you until you can't do it anymore. I have triplets who were born early at 27 weeks. I remember being in the NICU where 2 of the 3 kids had coded that day because of premature lungs. They were on oscillators and had a chest tube because they both had a hole in their lung. I was sitting by their bedside at 3 AM wishing I was awake because my kids were crying and I was up with newborn triplets. Instead, I was sitting by the bedside wondering if and how long they were going to live. All 3 had chronic lung disease. They are 6 now. 2 of them came home with a ventilator and a trach at my house for the first few years. 1 still has a trach, and we have to be up weird hours because we don't have night nursing 7 days a week. I know a thing or two about a lack of sleep and starting off the work week with 4 hours of sleep the Saturday night and Sunday night before Monday morning. Driving. To go with that, a reasonable commute. Commuting costs and time are a huge issue for poorer people who can't afford housing near where they work, or an issue when they have to get from one job to another. And in some places, public transportation barely even exists, so that doesn't help. Exactly. So many jobs ads these days have driver's license as a requirement. It's weird how many ads I've seen that list it as a requirement, even when the job doesn't require any driving. As a South Floridian, OMG yes. This, between people over the age of 80 who shouldn't be driving, and people who learn to drive in countries with little to no traffic laws. It's not ageism if Grammy literally can't see the speed limit sign 30 feet away and is doing 35 in the left lane in a 55. Knowing that food is available basically at all times in first world countries. I lived on an impoverished third world island / country for about 2 years. The lack of food availability is astonishing. The only things you can always count on being at the grocery store is rum, chicken wings, rice and soybean oil. Red meat is expensive and short supply. How many cows can an island support? Everything else is in short supply and must be imported. You can go weeks at a time without getting simple stuff like frozen broccoli or canned beans. The concept of returns or regulations don't exist either. They totally sell expired milk and dairy products. If you aren't observant enough to check, that is your bad. There is no FDA, so the quality of meat is low. The only way to get a good chicken is to buy and carve it yourself. Buying individual cuts at the grocery store is a no-no. They pump all kinds of solution into the breasts and thighs to make them weigh more. Hydrolyzed proteins, sugar and a whole bunch of other stuff they don't legally have to disclose. It has a horrid aftertaste. I had to befriend a farmer who would sell my chickens by the bird, and I would then carve them up myself and feed the carcasses to the street dogs. Trash pickup is also a first world luxury. The government drops off at dumpsters in random places 1 day a week. It's your job to get your trash to one on the correct day. This means you often have to freeze your trash or feed it to street dogs because it will rot in your trash. Roaches will smell it and come up your drains. In the US we have the luxury of drain nets at the bottom of our pipes, so sewer roaches don't crawl up them. Not the case in other countries. The most annoying is mail. Mail delivery is a first world luxury. The island I lived on, the streets don't have names and buildings don't have numbers. You had to drive to the only post office in the capital, and not only was shipping expensive, you have to bribe the post office workers to give you your mail or they will claim it isn't there. Electronic payment doesn't really exist. Everything is cash based. ATM is broken 50% of the time, so when it works you have to pull out all 3 cash you can. Very few businesses have credit card machines and often half the time they aren't working. Paying bills was the most awful. No electronic payment. You go to the electric company and wait in one line to get your bill, and then you wait in a second line to pay your bill with cash. You better have small bills. If you only have big bills, there is a chance they will lie and say they don't have change, and they can pocket it all. If you have $400 East Caribbean, but the electric bill is $350, you just have to absorb the $50 loss, or get out of line, get change, and then wait in line again to pay. Awful life. I was a soldier who fought in Afghanistan. We had a better diet there than the people on that island. The US government did a decent job providing beef and fish for us in a landlocked country. We got our mail regularly and fairly fast too. Sorry for my extended rant. I hated that island. Made me so thankful I was American. May I ask why you live there? I did a portion of medical school there. Caribbean branch of an American school. Back in the US now. Mail delivery is a first world luxury. This is one of my favorite examples for why it's great to live in a place with minimal corruption and good infrastructure. You can do things like send cash through the mail. Don't do that without much concern about it being molested or delivered a month late. The fact that the process is so transparent and mundane that it doesn't take any thought to put high value parcels through the mail is not appreciated enough by people. Lol, PPL were making jokes about if you fail the MCATs you can go to med school by the beach all day. But now you opened my eyes to what that's like. Take your MCAT prep seriously, everyone. Do your Kaplan exercises every week. They literally accept anyone and everyone. People with liberal arts and humanities degrees. People with no degrees. My class started out with 60 people. The first day talking to some of these people, they didn't take a single proper prereq for this. It was like that woke up one day and thought it would be cool to be a doctor. By the 5th semester our class was around 15 people. So far only 3 from my class have passed CPSET and are allowed to take step 1. After the basic sciences it takes almost a year or 2 of self-studying to pass step 1 because of how bad the teaching quality is. As shitty as my school was, there are worse ones in the Caribbean. At least mine was accredited, so I can take step 1. There's some schools on the island that aren't accredited. Some really dumb people fall for it. I never took the MCAT. I come from a family of doctors and we all do medical school in the Caribbean because it's cheaper. I wish I would have pushed back and insisted on a US school. At least they are cheap tuition wise. I won't be in too much debt at the end. You get what you pay for though. The teaching quality is awful. I'm in the Kaplan USMLE Step 1 review now, BTW. It's a good class. Where, in the Caribbean, an estimated 23.5 million Americans live in food deserts. I'm lucky enough to live within a mile of 3 different grocery stores, and that makes me incredibly privileged even compared to many of my fellow Americans. Yep, I live in a food desert. The nearest actual grocery store is about an hour drive away. I don't have to worry a lot, mainly because of Amazon.com. The nearest actual grocery store is about an hour drive away. As someone who gets annoyed if I live more than 5 to 10 minutes walking distance away from the nearest supermarket, that's genuinely remarkable. Perks of city living, I guess. As someone who has led a very easy and privileged life, the concept of starving to death is so foreign to me, it's almost like it's fictional. I see pictures of people who are obviously starving, and in the back of my head I'm thinking there has to be something to eat. Did you check the back of the freezer? Rationally I know it's a very real problem, but my mind just can't fully grasp the possibility of being in a situation where there's literally nothing to eat. I used to have an eating disorder, so I got a teeny tiny taste of what starving feels like, and since then I've been even more horrified by the idea of starving to death. After a few days with no food, or a few weeks with very little food, you kind of start losing your mind, and it's all you can think about. Everything hurts and eventually it becomes almost impossible to resist the urge. I can't even imagine getting to that point and way beyond and not being able to do anything about it until you just straight up die. Or seeing it happen to your child or spouse and not being able to stop it. It's fucking disgusting that we have too much excess food being thrown away every day and there are still people starving in this world. I feel a bit like that too when I see pictures like the one posted recently on r/morbid reality with the Bengal famine. I can't fully grasp how it is possible to starve to death unless in a critical situation like lost in the desert or something. On those pictures, there's dozens of people just dead in the street. Those people died from starving. It takes 3 weeks for a human to die if you eat absolutely nothing. Imagine how horrible it must be for these people. I guess they didn't stop to eat completely. They might have eaten some food here and there, so it must have been a very long and painful death. Looking around, we have been hit with the pendulum going the other way. We, meaning pretty much all developed parts of the world, are suffering from a serious health crisis caused by abundance of cheap food and our collective inability to moderate the intake. The optimal zone in this regard is a narrow one. It's more complicated than that. The cheap, calorie-rich food that's most available to poor communities in food deserts is also very light on nutrients. Some places legitimately have a serious problem with people who are both obese and severely malnourished. The rest of the world, not first world countries, isn't necessarily as you may be imagining it. I don't live in the first world, but we are not starving or so. Yeah. Even starving people in most areas of first world countries can find food in the garbage or literally beg for food from their neighbors and strangers. Definitely not ideal, but it's far different from places where you and your family is literally starving to death, and so is everyone else around you, because there's not even scraps to chew on. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Also like the video if you enjoy it.